Noons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good afternoon. It's just gone 4 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua, and for the first 2 hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today is political commentator Sam Dowler for the first time ever on the panel. Welcome, Sam. And also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Before we get started, let's get your latest news headlines.
Nana, thank you. Good afternoon. It's 1 minute past 4. I'm Bethany Elsey in the GB newsroom. A man has been charged with facilitating attempted illegal entry into the UK. It's after 4 people died and 39 were rescued from the English Channel when a migrant boat capsized earlier this week. Kent police say 19-year-old Ibrahima Bar, of no fixed address, has been remanded in custody and will appear at Folkestone Magistrates Court tomorrow. A cabinet minister says it's not fair that military personnel are having to cover for public sector workers on strike over the festive period. Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, Oliver Dowden, urged unions to call off the industrial action, warning significant pay rises would end up making everyone poorer. More than 1,000 troops are expected to cover striking workers, such as paramedics and border force officials. Meanwhile, the Chief of the Defence Staff says the military is busy and should not be treated by the government as spare capacity. Rishi Sunak is accusing union boss Mick Lynch of causing misery to millions by timing rail strikes to hit the Christmas period. Writing in The Sun on Sunday, the Prime Minister says an increasing number of union members want a deal, but the RMT has rejected what he describes as fair offers. Mick Lynch, who is the union's General Secretary, says rail staff continue to receive strong support from the public. Nurses are threatening to escalate their industrial action in the new year if the government fails to break the deadlock over their pay by next week. The Royal College of Nursing warns it could impact a greater number of hospitals and scale back support for non-emergency services if further action goes ahead. They're demanding ministers respond within 48 hours of Tuesday's walkout. Police searching a property in Birmingham say they've found what is believed to be the remains of a child. West Midlands Police have been searching the garden of a house in Handsworth following information about a possible burial. A post-mortem examination will be carried out to establish the cause of death. A 52-year-old man has been charged with the murders of a mother and her 2 young children in Northamptonshire. Police found Anju Asok, an NHS nurse, and her 2 children, aged 6 and 4, with serious injuries at a house in Kettering on Thursday. They all died a short time later. Post-mortem examinations determined all three died as a result of asphyxiation. Saju Shilavalel will appear at Northampton Magistrates Court tomorrow. The former Met Police Commissioner has been accused of trying to minimise the murder of Sarah Everard. The government's outgoing advisor on tackling violence against women told the Sunday Times Dame Cressida Dick complained shortly after the murder that the government's initial response was over the top. Dame Cressida has strenuously denied making those comments. The founder of The Big Issue magazine says the government needs to get off its rear in tackling homelessness in the UK. Lord Bird, who launched the magazine in 1991, warns the threat of homelessness for families is worse than it's ever been. He says there are 1 million people who face slipping into poverty and homelessness due to not being able to pay their rent or mortgage. He's urging the government to move away from short-term solutions. And in some other news, Eurovision winners Ukraine has picked their entry for the next year's song contest. The competition to select a group was broadcast live from a metro station in Kiev, the capital, which also doubles as a bomb shelter. Dvorchi won the Heart of Steel with the Heart of Steel song and will now be heading to Liverpool in May. The competition is usually held in the winning country, but will be held in the UK instead due to the ongoing war in Ukraine. You're up to date on GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now let's get back to Nana.
Good afternoon. It's just coming up to 6 minutes after 4 o'clock. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Now, what I believe we witnessed this week were two of the most self-obsessed, ungrateful people on the planet. Yeah, you guessed it. Harry and Meghan in their final 3 episodes of their 6-part docu-whatever. Frankly, I'd like to give them what they want. Privacy. So like the last set, Episode 4 begins with a play on the heartstrings. Meghan goes to Grenfell showing off her humanitarian credentials. And yes, that was the bit where we thought that she was amazing. That was what we want our royal family to be doing. Meghan participates in their ritual of a hug with 3 or 4 kisses on either side, which is odd because I'm sure in the last episode she mocked British society for not being very huggy. They were doing so well. Meghan was pregnant, Australia a success. They were apparently being dubbed the superstars of the royal family. But in their view, perhaps they were becoming too good at this. Nothing like playing your own trumpet. In fact, they claimed the rest of the family were spooked by just how good at it they were compared to Wills and Kate, and how the spare and his wife were doing a better job than the heir. Yeah, right. For all of 5 minutes, the job requires patience and stamina, which clearly they didn't possess. The whinge fest begins. Harry even compared him and Meghan to Charles and Diana, and they dragged the archives to find these clips, one of Piers Morgan, to confirm their narrative.
Putting aside what I think about her, right? She's becoming a royal rock star. Bigger, I would argue, as a couple than William and Kate. That's probably not a good thing in the long term.
And James Holt chips in.
Some people in the institution around the family started to see that this new couple could destabilise the power dynamics, whether actively talked about or not. The aim was to put them in a box or make...
So this is why, apparently, the press changed towards them. A load of articles appear to corroborate this, including the infamous Kate and Meghan avocado gate. And Prince Harry says...
This is how it was covered for her. This is how it was covered for her. If you don't see the difference and understand why it's being reported that way, then I can't help you.
Yes, well, the person who didn't help on his own admission was actually Meghan, who apparently was going through turmoil and admits that no one helped her. He talks about trading stories, but he's doing exactly the same thing, scheduling his media to eclipse his brothers. Harry says that they were amazed at what they had to do, i.e. leave. Well, it's a lot easier when you're ridiculously wealthy, you're still funded by your dad in your 30s and have a multi-million-pound inheritance. No one told them that they actually had to go. In fact, when they finally decided to tell us, the British public, that they wanted out, Meghan said that she thought the public hated them.
I thought, the public? If they've been fed these lies for 2 years, what do they think of me? What do they think of me?
Exactly, we didn't hate her. In fact, we were sad she was leaving and that they were leaving. And as if you think we're so stupid that we believe everything we read, the British public are intelligent and were very, very disappointed, me included. They didn't read the room again. Episode 5. These poor people in their multi-million-dollar mansions in the most gorgeous location of Vancouver Island, whinging. How are they going to fix things? I know, let's move to Canada and do the work in the name of the Queen. You get us for free. No, we'd still be paying for you. You just want the titles. Let's pick a Commonwealth country. All right for some. Look, people wanted to hear what they had to say because we thought it was going to be interesting. This was like a broken record. I honestly struggled to watch it. I fell asleep. I then woke up to the blaming race again. I had to rewind. There was a pilot story that actually did make me laugh.
We get on the plane, and it's not the pilot, but whoever's sort of overseeing the crew. And he came and he knelt next to my seat and he took his hat off. And I just remember looking at him, he goes, "We appreciate everything you did for our country."
Oh, God, this could turn out to be the Lion King and the rejoicing in the streets. Remember that all over again. We need to find the pilot.
We landed in Canada, and one of our security guards who had been with H for so long, and these guys were so wonderful, I just collapsed in his arms crying. I was like, I tried so hard. He goes, I know you did. I know you did, ma'am. I know you did.
She tried so hard for all of what, was it 18 months? In the third one, Meghan, reads out a text from Beyoncé saying that she's been selected to break down general curses.
She wants me to feel safe and protected. She admires and respects my bravery and vulnerability, and she thinks I was selected to break generational curses that need to be healed.
More whinging in March.
Hi, so we're here on Wednesday, the something of March. These next few months is when we're going to be at our most vulnerable, when the press will no doubt create some sort of feeding frenzy.
They're in a private jet, and don't mention the climate. And then there's the response to Oprah, all very lovely shots, but who's holding the cameras? There must be a crew in the room. Harry appears to be quite matter-of-fact as well about the death of his grandmother, who he said went peacefully.
I was actually really happy for my grandfather. He went quietly, he went peacefully, he went happily.
Well, of course, that's, of course, if he wasn't aware of the Oprah interview. I mean, they really have no idea of the effect of their actions. They're oblivious of their own behaviour. Harry's still talking about an apology. Look, Dan Wootton, he's got a show here on GBNews. He does it Monday to Thursday from 9 o'clock. And he was the journalist who broke many of the stories. And it seems that the truth is the royal family were trying to protect this couple and tried to stop stories from leaking. He should know they tried to stop him. My resounding take from this docu-soap whatever thing, apart from the fact that it was pretty boring and I had to force myself to go back to watching it, was that it started as it began, as a love story, and that, frankly, we've given these two way too much airspace, credited them with way too much intelligence, and they are normal people who haven't, like most of us, got a flaming clue. This is why the Queen said, never complain, never explain, because when you do, the gloss rubs off alongside the interest. And then, to add insult to injury, having seen the palace bend over backwards for Ngozi Fulani and give in to her narcissism with kindness, these two have also demanded an apology. You couldn't make it up. So I say, switch off. Don't buy the book. There's nothing in it they haven't already told us. You know what? Let's do what they want. They want the media to leave them alone. Let's just do that. I'm calling for a blackout on this pair, to all media in the UK and across the world to stop covering these two. Let's force them to live in the real world, just like the rest of us. Yes, Danny says it's the end of the show. Yeah, it was a longer monologue, but I had to. I couldn't let this go. Listen, before we get stuck into the debate, here's what else is coming up today for the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, should Ofcom regulate streaming giants like Netflix? Now, the government is planning to pass a new law that would give the broadcasting watchdog the power to regulate streaming giants like Amazon, Netflix and others. And this comes after critics point out the inaccuracies in the tell-all Harry and Meghan documentary. So what do you think? Should Ofcom have the power when it comes to regulating streaming giants? Then at 4:50, it's Worldview. Russian expert Danny Armstrong will be in the studio with the latest on the war in Ukraine. Putin has cancelled his annual PR press conference in the wake of Moscow's huge missile attack, which hit infrastructure all across the country. And I'll be catching up also with Paul Duddridge to get the latest on Trump. At 5, it's Outside. Now, today's special guest was at the forefront of government during the COVID pandemic. He was a leading figure in the NHS test and trace system, and that was launched to combat the spread of coronavirus. Can anyone guess who that might be? Stay tuned, find out more. That's coming up in the next hour. Tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. You can email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. Right, let's get started. Let's welcome again to my panel political commentator Sam Dowler and also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Right, I'm going to start with you, Sam, because his first words were, that was a rant and a half. What do you think? Oh, my God. What do you think? Did you watch the Meghan and Harry thing?
Do you know what? Actually, so Dan was and is a friend of mine, and he has been for many years. While we were together in Windsor for the wedding. And it was a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Everyone was just full of love. I met Americans in pubs and stuff, and we were just dancing and just loving life and loving Meghan and loving Harry. So the country was really, really positive, and so I understand, you know, why it's the dichotomy between then and now is just so abrasive. So I haven't watched it because Dan was like, I have to watch it for work. And I was like, I can't, for my mental health, to be honest with you. Watch it? Because I know how much stress it will give me. And also I mean, they claim it's a documentary, but it's really a reality show, isn't it?
But nothing was really real. I mean, even the intro towards it was... Yeah,
but also it is made for an American audience as well. I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen, like, American documentaries.
I have, yes.
But the music is like, you know, comes in and out, and it's, like, really emotive.
Yeah.
And I get it. So, and, like, when you watch something, and when you watch somebody upset... and, you know, whether she was acting or not, she's got her head in her hands, etc. You do, you know, you feel empathy, of course you do. But, you know, this is literally one-sided, and also, and they take no responsibility for their own actions. Anything they might have done themselves. And, like, no one is beyond... No one is beyond reproach. They didn't mention it. Exactly, and no one is beyond reproach. Everybody, we all make mistakes, and especially within a family. I mean, you know, like, you know, you would apologise to your sister and stuff, even if she had done something wrong, you would be like, yeah.
Or if my father was ill, I would, you know, even if I'd had an argument with him, like he'd published a story that didn't quite understand the dynamics of the media, which obviously she's publishing one after the other, or all this thing is sort of story, I would forgive my father. I wouldn't leave him ill. Danny?
Well, you know, I've always been willing to give them a chance and an opportunity. I've got to say, I really don't like him now. I've watched this docu-series. I mean, Harry is such a weak man. She definitely wears the trousers. She's definitely in charge. And when he says, oh, by the way, they received a text from William just as the cameras were rolling. How convenient. Here's a text, and it's from my brother.
True, can it?
Of course, it's all staged. But when he said he was terrified, this is a captain in the Royal Household Grenadiers, whatever the regiment is, who's done 2 tours of Afghanistan, who's been dodging rocket-propelled grenades whilst he's in an Apache helicopter, and he's terrified of a screaming match from his brother. I don't buy it.
But also, brothers argue all the time. Like,
of course they do.
It's the first time he's ever screamed to him. Come on. I mean, but one thing I will say is that, like, which no one's really talked about is this lunch that Camilla had, which Piers Morgan went to, and Jeremy Clarkson went to. And Jeremy Clarkson, said the most appalling things about how much he hates Meghan from a cellular level, and cannot wait till she's made to parade naked through the streets of Britain and people throw excrement at her.
Oh no, that's awful. That's
too much.
But that's on his Twitter.
Well, he's a sensationalist, isn't he?
That's in a newspaper.
In a newspaper.
Yeah,
but he's a sensationalist, isn't he? That's what he does.
Of course, I'm sure it's tongue in cheek, but I mean, it's that sort of thing that people would read.
But no,
and they'd be like, obviously that's appalling.
I understand now why people write things like that.
But that is appalling, actually, to be fair. I mean, I don't think that's, we've repeated that, but that is written down, but I actually think that's quite bad. That's even for Jeremy Clarkson. Although, actually, no, he said a lot worse than that.
Well, exactly.
When I think but to say that about her, I wouldn't go as far as to say that myself.
No, not excrement, maybe rotten tomato. Still being paraded naked. I tell you what I hated was the direct link between Brexit and racism.
Oh gosh,
that was unforgivable.
Well, they also distorted. So they used Queen Elizabeth II had a speech that she did when she was 21.
Yeah.
And this was in South Africa. And what they did was they slightly manipulated it. It looked like it had been re-edited and manipulated so that it was more negative about the Commonwealth, and it showed how she loved. I mean, and that's actually one of the things we're going to be discussing with regard to Ofcom and regard to Netflix as well. But
I understand why so many people hate them. I do know.
Mm-hmm. Well, listen, tell me what you think. I mean, I love a good rant, don't you? Well, look, tell me what your thoughts. As usual, you can do the same thing. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online, and on digital radio. Send me your thoughts out to GB News or email gbviews@gbnews.uk. On the way, our Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, should Ofcom regulate streaming giants like Netflix? Now, Westminster are looking to pass a new law that would give the broadcasting watchdog the power to regulate people like Netflix and Amazon following the controversial Tell All Harry and Meghan documentary. Send me your thoughts, as ever, at the usual place. You can also tweet me. I've got a poll up right now asking you that very question. Should Ofcom regulate streaming giants like Netflix? Cast that vote. We'll be back after this.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8". My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Good afternoon. If you've just joined me, it's fast approaching 24 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua. Now, before the break, we were discussing the Harry and Meghan documentary. I'll call it that for now. Let's have a look at what you've been saying. Nigel says, hi, Nana. I look forward to this book coming out so I can exercise my democratic right not to buy it. Dottie says, all I can say in absolute seriousness is that Meghan lives in Fantasyland. Yes, Fantasy Island. Pamela says, oh, God, Nana, where is the sick bucket? They are unbelievable at just how much self-pity they keep spurting out. I know, you would think that they might watch that back and go, oh, hang on a minute, we're really rich, we've got quite a nice life, perhaps we should just give it a rest. Oh, no. But right now it is time for our Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, should Ofcom regulate streaming giants? The Prime Minister is set to provide the broadcast regulator a legal basis to hold streaming giants to account. This comes in the wake of Harry and Meghan's docu-series, where the couple made serious accusations against the royal family, the institution and the United Kingdom as a whole, describing it as Empire 2.0. I think it was Afua Hirsch who said that. Despite people ringing Ofcom about inaccuracies in the new docu-series, Ofcom simply replied that they could do nothing about it. However, if streaming giants are to be regulated, they may be subject to the broadcasting rules outlined in Ofcom's code, whereby factual programmes or items or portrayals of factual matters must not materially mislead the audience. Currently, Ofcom doesn't regulate Netflix, but ministers are planning a new law to form part of the government's media bill, and it could be ready as soon as next year. And new powers could also allow Ofcom to investigate streaming giants where, if companies are found to have breached the code of conduct, it could result in being fined up to £250,000. Although I don't think that's enough. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should Ofcom regulate streaming giants? Let's speak to advisor at Media Objectives and a former chief advisor to Ofcom, Martin Campbell. Martin, thank you very much for joining us. Now, I want to ask you, first of all, do you support the idea that Ofcom should regulate streaming giants like Netflix?
Well, it's not a bad idea, but it is an idea that's full of, it's a labyrinth. It's full of pitfalls. The big difficulty, of course, with Netflix in particular is that it's based in Holland, and therefore Ofcom has no locus over it whatsoever. It does have a slight locus over Amazon Prime, Disney Plus, one or two others, but the fact that Netflix is based in Holland is a real problem. So there will be legal things to sort out there, and I very much doubt if Holland wants to hand over any of its regulatory powers to Ofcom. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, yes, it's a good idea, but I would quite like viewer expectation, which is quite a big regulatory consideration most of the time, to be taken into account. A lot of the time with media, you get a consultation because the government or Ofcom have decided to do something. They put out a consultation, they ignore the results of the consultation and go ahead anyway. This is one where I actually believe that viewers should have a say, because not everybody is stupid. Not everybody thinks that everything they see on television is true.
Mm. Yeah, but OK, so I don't know whether you managed to watch Harry and Meghan, but you may have seen the trailer. And, for example, in the trailer, there were immediate instances where it was clear that they had taken imagery and kind of let no one's to say they were deliberately trying to mislead you. But, for example, one of the clips where they showed the paparazzi was actually a clip of a Harry Potter, that was a Harry Potter sort of premiere type thing done 5 years before they met. That shouldn't be allowed. And surely, if a streaming giant is to be streaming in this country, they should, have to abide by the laws within this country, just like other media outlets. I don't see why another jurisdiction would supersede it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. If Ofcom did have any powers over Netflix at the moment, then this docu-series, whatever that's supposed to mean, would certainly not have passed the broadcasting code test. I mean, even a film like 2000 Mules, which has caused no end of a fuss, had experts on it that said, look, there's no problem here. You know, what you're hearing has another side to it. You know, even 2000 Mules had that. This one appears to just accept with no evidence whatsoever one side of a story. That certainly is problematic, as media commentators have said. There's no sort of smoking gun there. So I don't class it as a documentary.
Yeah, well, listen, it was a bit like the Oprah interview where it was totally unchallenged and a lot of it was very one-sided. Well, thank you very much, Martin. Stay right there, because I'm also joined by former Brexit Party MEP and political commentator Belinda de Lucy. Belinda, thank you so much for joining me. So what do you think? Do you support the idea of Ofcom regulating streaming giants, and if so, why?
I definitely support it regulating documentaries and news stations, for example. When there are programmes that portray themselves as truth finders and fact givers, then I do think it's essential that fake evidence is not used, and if it is used, that they are held to account over it. Of course, you know, with Meghan and Harry's documentary, it wasn't sold as a reality TV show, although it came across as one. It was sold as a documentary, and a definition of documentary is about revealing the truth and educating people about facts and the truth. So when they use fake evidence in their photographs that clearly are completely unconnected to the two of them, that is fake news. That is essentially, you know, using fake evidence to support an accusation against a group of people, which they should be fined over that. However, I do have concerns over Ofcom regulating free legal speech. That's a separate story. And as much as it you know, hurt listening to Meghan and Harry, and as much as I'm offended by a lot of what they say, they have absolutely the free right to say it. However, they should not be allowed to use fake evidence.
What about the online safety bill, though? Because that features plans to fine social media companies vast sums of money if they break codes of conduct. I mean, would Ofcom not be sort of crossing a line there and kind of getting involved in what can and can't be said? So then it might feel like they're actually sort of censoring things.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of this meddling over what is hateful or not hateful. You know, I've got 4 kids. I definitely want regulation online over what they can and can't see. For example, very harmful porn films that children have access to, or even sort of paedophilia programs sanitizing paedophilia. I don't want that kind of thing accessible for children. So I do appreciate the online bill protecting children from that. However, who defines what is hateful? If Ofcom becomes political, and in many ways you could say it has been, it barely mentioned or chastised the BBC at all over its coverage over Brexit. You know, you can judge Ofcom for being a little bit biased now and again and letting people off with certain political views. So how would then it define hate? Why are gender-critical women banned from so many platforms because they don't believe women have penises? You know, would Ofcom then say that is hateful and therefore ban them? So I completely agree with you. I think in terms of legal free speech, Ofcom should keep its hands off. But in terms of providing fake news, then, yeah, it should fine.
Let me bring Martin back in on this as well, because Martin actually was a former advisor to Ofcom. Listen, Martin, what do you think there? Because with regard to this, the point here is that there'll be a slight dilemma with regard to free speech and, of course, this Netflix being, in a sense, policed by Ofcom.
Yeah, it is a big problem because the online safety bill was a complete mess. And the idea that people should be regulating what was legal and harmful was ridiculous at the outset. I mean, if it's legal, then fine. If it's harmful, there are already laws to deal with it. So all the discussion about, you know, well, what's legal but harmful is a nonsense. And it worries me that the idea of regulating things that come into people's houses properly, like Netflix and Amazon Prime and Disney and so on, if that gets conflated with the rubbish in the online safety bill, then we do have a bit of a problem coming up.
Well, listen, thank you both for joining me. Really good to hear your views. That's former Brexit MEP Belinda de Lucy, and also Martin Campbell. He's an advisor at Media Objectives and a former chief advisor to Ofcom. Thank you so much. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. After the break, we will continue with our Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, should Ofcom regulate streaming giants like Netflix? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, political commentator Sam Dowler, and also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Then stay with me at 5 o'clock in this week's Outside. Today's special guest was at the forefront of the government during the COVID pandemic. He was a leading figure in the NHS test and trace system. I'll give you one more clue. He used to manage the nightclub Ministry of Sound. So who is it? Stay tuned for the big reveal. First, though, let's get your latest news headlines.
Nana, thank you. It's 4:33. I'm Bethany Elsey in the GB newsroom. A man has been charged with facilitating attempted illegal entry into the UK. It's after 4 people died and 39 were rescued from the English Channel when a migrant boat capsized earlier this week. Kent police say 19-year-old Ibrahima Bar, of no fixed address, has been remanded in custody and will appear at Folkestone Magistrates Court tomorrow. A cabinet minister says it's not fair that military personnel are having to cover for public sector workers on strike over the festive period. Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, Oliver Dowden, urged unions to call off the industrial action, warning significant pay rises would end up making everyone poorer. More than 1,000 troops are expected to cover striking workers, such as paramedics and Border Force officials. Police searching a property in Birmingham say they've found what is believed to be the remains of a child. West Midlands Police have been searching the garden of a house in Handsworth following information about a possible burial. A post-mortem examination will be carried out to establish the cause of death. The founder of The Big Issue magazine says the government needs to get off its rear in tackling homelessness in the UK. Lord Bird, who launched the magazine in 1991, warns the threat of homelessness for families is worse than it's ever been. He says there are 1 million people who face slipping into poverty and homelessness due to not being able to pay their rent or mortgage. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. We'll get back to Nana in just a moment.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akua, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. This is a GB News. Don't forget you can stream us live on YouTube. Check out all the shows and also all those monologues. I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Now, it is time for our Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, should Ofcom regulate streaming giants? Now, the Prime Minister is set to provide the broadcast regulator Ofcom a legal basis to hold streaming giants to account. So that is people like Netflix, Amazon Prime. Now, this comes in the wake of Harry and Meghan's docu-series. I don't know whether you watched it, but the couple made some serious accusations against the royal family, the institution and the United Kingdom as a whole, describing it as the Empire 2.0. Akua Hirsch is the person who initially coined that phrase. I watched and thought, well, I don't know what she's talking about. New powers would allow Ofcom to fine these companies up to £250,000, which I actually don't think is enough money, seeing as they're prepared to pay 110 million or whatever it was to that lot. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should Ofcom regulate streaming giants? Let's see what my panel think of that. I'm joined by political commentator Sam Dowler and also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Danny, I'm going to start with you then.
Why, thank you.
You're lucky that Sam didn't kiss you on the lips.
Yes, this
kissed Calvin on the lips by accident.
I'm glad I missed this. This involved a moment with Father... Yes, but Father Calvin Robinson, of all people.
No, you kissed him on the lips. Oh, God.
The holy water's bubbling as we speak.
Praise be.
But what if he'd done that to you by accident, Danny?
Oh, he'd have got a headbutt. He'd have got we call it in Liverpool a Kirby kiss.
So what do you think?
Netflix. I think you're right, Nana. £250,000 is just a drop in the ocean to Netflix. Really. If they're paying, or what was the total cost? 100 million?
About 100 million for them.
So what's £250,000? They would gladly break the rules, knowing that all they've got to do is pay £250,000. My only hesitancy here is that did Harry and Meghan know that the paparazzi shots weren't taking photos of them? Because Netflix would have produced it, they would have watched it before Netflix gave it the green light. But would they have known that was misleading?
Well, first of all, one of them was Katie Price outside Crawley Magistrates Court. They would know if they've been outside court for whatever reason.
I don't think the court was featured.
No, there was actually in the background, somewhere in the background, you could actually see it. So she was on her way or coming out of court or something. The other one was, there was one at the end, the limousine shot, which was Donald Trump, one of his aides, was actually on his way to prison after being done for...
tax evasion.
Tax evasion, yeah. I mean, you really couldn't make it up. And then the other one, Harry Potter, it was a premiere or something, and it was done 5 years before they even together. So if you're going to be featuring in something that has your name on it, if I'm featuring in something with my name on it and I allow all the falseness to go ahead, then I would have to take the clout for it.
Look, speaking as a seasoned radio presenter, having worked for the BBC...
Oh, here we go.
Stands new to all of this.
It's only been half an hour, 40 minutes. 41 minutes and he's talked about it.
Tell us all about it.
Well, funny you should ask.
Go on.
I'm not a fan of Ofcom. I think that they clamp down too readily and they always err on the side of caution. Yeah. So I'm not a fan of Ofcom. Should they get involved with Netflix? Well, as we've agreed, 250 grand ain't going to touch them. I'm more worried about what people can see on YouTube. You know, you can go on YouTube and see so many factually inaccurate documentaries.
Yeah, well, of course. It's like your guest said about 2,000 mules, whatever it was. I have to say one thing, first of all, is that Netflix have said, a spokesman for Netflix said that they were supportive of measures to update the legal framework and bring our
that's our statement at the end.
UK.
What are you reading that for? I do that at the end of the debate.
Just ruin the whole segment.
Listen, this is not your show. I'm not having him back. No, listen, we do that at the end. So statement at the end.
My point is that of course they
do it now. Kirby kiss, quick, on the side.
Of course they would say that, and I do think I don't think, for example, that Harry and Meghan would have seen the trailer. It was a trailer, and they don't put together the package.
Well, they would have
seen the trailer. Of course they would have.
But also, they would. I don't think Harry and Meghan would have known that. Oh, that was from a Harry Potter premiere. That was from Katie Price.
Oh, no, I agree.
They wouldn't have known any of that.
But they wouldn't have known the context.
They would have been like, we're the most popular people in England at the time, so it must have been about us.
I'm tempted to side with Sam a little on
but that's irrelevant. The fact that this was allowed to go out almost as a documentary, so there's a factual element to it. That is the issue I have with it. If they said, this is a story, I mean, even The Crown, I find, I've not watched it because I think that's wrong, because these people are still living. You can't make stories up again like this. So I think that really this shouldn't be allowed.
There should be a disclaimer.
Because I also think that there is a level of you are creating a narrative where people who may be slightly unstable are watching this and believe it. So I think there's actually a danger in some respects to life.
It's about being unstable. I think it's like you just said about going down a rabbit hole. My mum sits there and watches videos about Meghan like until the early hours of the morning. I'm just like, Mum, get off YouTube. But like, it's almost they will never be able to regulate that, but they can regulate Netflix. And I don't think Netflix would ever put out something that was purposefully disingenuous.
I bet
they have on this occasion.
You have watched The Crown, haven't you?
With the paparazzi.
You just said
but that is a drama.
Yeah, but it's still purposeful.
It's a drama based in reality.
Nana, the
real people are still alive.
Just going back to the trailer, and the movie, the documentary. The alternative is that they knew that it wasn't their paparazzi. Now, they understand that everything will be scrutinised by people like Piers Morgan, who really hates all of this. So why would they leave an open goal for people like Piers Morgan to score? Well, that tells me they didn't know.
No. That tells me they didn't care. I mean, they're so litigious, right? If somebody's written something bad about them, they're on it.
They do jump
if
on your
you're
right.
going to be that way, you must understand that people will be just as litigious. So if you're putting out something, they obviously knew the rules. They knew they could get away with it. That's why they did it. I mean, there's a speech from Queen Elizabeth II when she's 21 in South Africa, and they have this has been slightly doctored, so it sounds like she's gleeful about empire and all this stuff, when actually it's actually been edited. So if you're putting stuff out, you need to know what's going on, and I suspect they do. I'm not going to give them the credit of saying, oh, we didn't know. But
didn't they also they tried to put it off after the Queen's death? They tried
exactly.
But the thing is, Netflix wanted their pound of flesh. They paid them a lot of money. They needed bombshells from Harry. Hence what he says about the private meeting, etc. That's what they needed, and that's what they had to use.
It's definitely a hit job from her, though. She wears the trousers. She's angry with the royal family. She wants to ruin them.
Well, actually, they've just asked for an apology. After they saw Ngozi Fulani, they thought, well, they've said sorry to her. Marlene Headley. After they've seen that, they're saying, well, why can't you apologise to us? In fact, even in one of these episodes, Prince Harry went, well, we still haven't got our apology. And I'm like, after what you've done, do you not think that you actually owe the apology?
To William and Kate, especially Kate.
Can I just say one thing that I don't think you're going to agree with me? Certainly not Nana. I don't see what money and wealth has got to do with it. Money won't buy you happiness. There are so many miserable millionaires.
You speak for yourself. I'll be more than happy. What are you talking about? I'll be over the moon. I'll be.
It doesn't buy you happiness.
This is the smile.
But they have an axe to grind. They felt like they were wronged, and they feel deeply about that. And I believe that they're surrounded by yes men and women who will facilitate that and say yes, you were wrong.
So in a word, should Ofcom be regulating these people, Sam?
Absolutely, yes.
No.
No, he says no. He said no. He says it so forcefully, really. Well, listen, this shows nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome our great British voice on. This is your opportunity to be on the show and tell us what you really think about the topics we're discussing. Where should we go? Should we go to Jess Gill? Should we go Reading? Reading. Let's go to Reading.
Lily went to uni there.
Did you?
Yeah.
Was there anything exciting in Reading, Jess? Jess, thank you very much for joining us. What do you think then? So Ofcom, welcome on board, by the way. Ofcom, they're looking to potentially, there could be legislation where they may be able to regulate these things. What's your view?
Great, Nana, thank you so much. I think this is just another example of socialists doing that, trying to expand the powers of the state. Harry and Meghan, they're complete idiots. They've exposed themselves as privileged narcissists, and I think the Netflix documentary has just further proven that. You know, freedom of speech is giving people the freedom to make themselves look like an idiot, which Harry and Meghan have done. Like, this Netflix documentary has not been popular for them, so I think it's a good thing that they have the freedom to expose themselves like that. And I think outlets like GB News, which, you know, Ofcom isn't the biggest fan of, and I think Ofcom are going the way off. You know, we shouldn't be expanding their powers, and outlets like GB News have provided meaningful criticism and scepticism of Harry and Meghan's documentary. And I think that's the power of freedom of speech. I think we should be allowing more freedom of speech, not less.
But what about the stuff that they're actually making stuff up or editing things where it's clear that that has been doctored in some way? Do you still think they should allow them to do that so we can expose that they've done this?
Again, I think GB News, for example, have provided great commentary and great stories on that, exposing them. And again, as you said before, Harry and Meghan probably knew that people like Piers Morgan were going to, scrutinise what they were going to say. And I think that's more meaningful than the state, because the state isn't going to, scrutinise people fairly, whereas the media, as much as Harry and Meghan try to pretend that they're the only victim, the media scrutinises everyone, and I think that's way more fair. I think that's a true marketplace.
That's where it should be. Well, listen, Jess, thank you very much. Very, very eloquent. Definitely get Jess back on what she said about GB News. That's the fabulous Jess Gill. She's there in Reading. She's our great British voice. Right, let's have a look at what you've been saying. OK, Tom says, interesting question. Who regulates the regulators? Good question. Who regulates the regulators? We do, GB News. Although Mark Stein calls them Scoffcom. Scoffcom. Mark Stein calls Ofcom Scoffcom. He said it before. I don't know, because they talk a lot. Marvin says no, but Netflix should pay tax in the UK. That's a good point. Sally says, yes, fake news must be stopped. There are some gullible people out there. I agree. I think it should be stopped. In a previous statement that Sam tried to read out, a Netflix spokesman said that the company was supportive of the measures to update the legal framework and bring our service in the UK under Ofcom's jurisdiction, but they did not comment on claims of the inaccuracy directed at the Harry and Meghan documentary. You're with me. This is GB News. I'm live. This is GB News. I said that once before. On TV, online and on digital radio. Still to come, it's World View. Now, the Kremlin launches another missile attack on Ukraine, destroying some of the key infrastructure. And Putin misses his annual end-of-year press conference. I wonder why. We'll also talk everything Trump. That's all after this.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Kerr.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation, This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Good afternoon. It is fast approaching 53 minutes after 4 o'clock. If you've just tuned in, welcome on board. I'm Nana Akua. We are GB News. This is the People's Channel. Now it's time for World View. And Russia has launched another missile attack on Ukraine in the ongoing invasion. Water and energy services have been severely destroyed, leaving the country in a blackout. So joining me in the studio to talk all about Russia is political commentator and Russia expert Danny Armstrong. Danny, talk to me about the present situation then, because it seems like Putin has gone a little bit, he's sort of turbo boosting his attacks now.
Well, yeah, on Friday we saw widespread bombing of Ukraine, which meant millions of Ukrainians were without water, without electricity, without heating. And of course, if you think some of the strikes and some of the cost of living problems in this country has been difficult to shelter people, to keep people warm, you've got to think what it's like over there at the moment, where temperatures are getting towards freezing, below freezing. Putin did have a meeting with some of his top commanders to figure out the next steps. Of course, at the minute, the bombing campaigns are targeting energy infrastructure. They're also targeting residential buildings. It's much the same as we've seen throughout the war. Now, Russia are really readying themselves for an offensive, as we've seen that the loss of Kherson.
He's losing support. I mean, there's the press conference, which he does every year, usually to sort of bolster up his ego and stuff. He didn't do it this time. He's cancelled it.
Well, for my money, I mean, for someone who used to work in sort of propaganda for the state channel in Russia, I would think that propaganda is really, really struggling to keep up with the negative aspects of the war. Putin met with his top commanders, and of course, morale is at an all-time low since losing Kherson. Kherson, of course, is the only major city that Russia had managed to capture, and after losing that, there were a lot of people turning around, especially those who support him, and have really... Well, the support has been turned on its head.
So why is this? Because I hear that there's potential that they're now trying to take Kyiv, or that they may try that in the new year. If he's losing so much support, what is the, where are we going with this? What in your view is the next?
Well, it doesn't look like, at the moment, at least, negotiations are going to bring out a peaceful end to the war. The Ukrainian intelligence believes that there will be another Russia offensive. Of course, as I said, that retreat from Kherson was the kind of ready Russia for when it can launch an offensive. Of course, that won't be anytime soon. It will probably be after Christmas, after New Year, sometime early in the new year. Ukrainian intelligence is wary of an attack coming from the north, possibly from Belarus, but it doesn't look like negotiations are going to bring out a peaceful end to the war anytime soon, unfortunately.
That's such a shame, really, because really he's lost support. People don't want him. I think it's now time for people to start maybe negotiating and trying to deal with some sort of retreat. Thank you very much, Danny. That's Danny Armstrong. He's our political commentator. Right, well, let's travel over to America now. We're going to have a chat with the Politics People podcast host, Paul Duddridge. Paul, good to see you. Now, talk to me. Trump, what's going on? What's his latest project in America? America needs a seeker, apparently. Is that it?
Sorry, say that again. You just cut out. What was that?
What's Trump's latest project? America needs a superhero. Is that... Am I reading this correctly?
Oh, that's right. Yes. Well, yes. I mean, he's not quite up to the mark of breaking generational curses, but what he is doing, he's released a load of... NFTs. I don't know if you're familiar with these non-fungible tokens. So digital artwork, and you could buy. Trump announced that he was making this major speech, and it turned out that what he was doing was pitching these NFTs, and they're basically depicting little playing cards, digital playing cards of Trump dressed as an astronaut, a cowboy, superhero, and they were $99 each. They sold 45,000 of them in minutes. They went like hotcakes, and everybody's making fun of him, but they've already more than doubled in price.
Yeah.
So they are a sound investment. But yeah, everybody's sort of ripping him because apparently this is beneath the status of a former president. However, I think it's very Trumpian and very funny.
What about the most recent poll that showed Ron DeSantis take a very heavy lead over Trump? Is that something that's believable?
Well, look, the fact is the majority of the polls still have Trump ahead of DeSantis. It's like there's one 3 days ago, 25 points ahead of DeSantis. This is a Wall Street Journal poll, and the Wall Street Journal hates Trump. And so, look, the establishment wants populism to go away, and so if it continues to, so it can continue in its own self-interest without scrutiny. And so people like Trump make it harder for them. So when you get a little glimmer of hope, like one poll that shows DeSantis ahead, they trumpet it, and they want Trump gone. And they think that these kind of press releases are going to suddenly stop Trump supporters supporting him. They won't change support until he decides to leave the stage. Until he does that, they never will. But no, this is, like I said, 25 points ahead 3 days ago in this is one from Harvard poll. So you can take your polls and do whatever you want with them, but mistrust any media that outwardly hates Trump, Wall Street Journal being one of them.
So is there anything else going on? We've got about a minute left. So what else is going on in America at the moment?
Well, look, we touched on it last week. They've turned on Harry and Meghan. I mean, it's just, this is just idle gossip on my part. But everybody, every news show is just, they're almost referring to it as the Harry hostage video.
What about Gayle King, though? She's a big fan. Has she gotten off them as well?
Yes. Oh my God. This is the thing. And she's the official spokesperson for Oprah, basically, isn't she? And so you can see from that camp, people are just going, oh my God. It's that Queen thing. Editing the Queen's speech, very, very bad.
Very bad. Very bad.
That's a very bad move. And, the thing is, other people are pointing out, well, hang on, what about curtsying Americans?
Oh, that was
they
bad.
put their hand over their chest to sing the national anthem. Every day kids in school have to recite a poem to the flag. We've got a bunch of customs here that are a bit weird as well, but we are respectful.
Well, that's
so
the thing.
Americans, this week, they've shot themselves badly.
Well, this is interesting. Paul Dudgery, it's always good to talk to you. That's Paul Dudgery. He's the host of the Politics People podcast. Cracky. Even Harry and Meghan, they've gone off them stateside. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. More to come in the next hour. It's 5 o'clock. This is GB News. I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. For the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines. On the way, it is outside. A very special guest. You'll find out after your latest news headlines.
Nana, thank you. It's just gone 5 o'clock. I'm Bethany Elsey in the GB newsroom. A man has been charged with facilitating attempted illegal entry into the UK. It's after 4 people died and 39 were rescued from the English Channel when a migrant boat capsized earlier this week. Kent police say 19-year-old Ibrahima Bar, of no fixed address, has been remanded in custody and will appear at Folkestone Magistrates Court tomorrow. A cabinet minister says it's not fair that military personnel are having to cover for public sector workers on strike over the festive period. Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, Oliver Dowden, urged unions to call off the industrial action, warning significant pay rises would end up making everyone poorer. More than 1,000 troops are expected to cover striking workers, such as paramedics and Border Force officials. Meanwhile, the Chief of the Defence Staff says the military is busy and should not be treated by the government as spare capacity. Rishi Sunak is accusing union boss Mick Lynch of causing misery to millions by timing rail strikes to hit the Christmas period. Writing in The Sun on Sunday, the Prime Minister says an increasing number of union members want a deal, but the RMT has rejected what he describes as fair offers. Mick Lynch, who is the union's General Secretary, says rail staff continue to receive strong support from the public. Nurses are threatening to escalate industrial action in the new year if the government fails to break the deadlock over pay by next week. The Royal College of Nursing warns it could impact a greater number of hospitals and scale back support for non-emergency services if further action goes ahead. They're demanding ministers respond within 48 hours of Tuesday's walkout. Police searching a property in Birmingham say they've found what is believed to be the remains of a child. West Midlands Police have been searching the garden of a house in Hounsworth, following information about a possible burial. A post-mortem examination will be carried out to establish the cause of death. A 52-year-old man has been charged with the murders of a mother and her 2 young children in Northamptonshire. Police found Anju Asok, an NHS nurse, and her children, aged 6 and 4, with serious injuries at a house in Kettering on Thursday. They all died a short time later. Post-mortem examinations determined all 3 died as a result of asphyxiation. Saju Shelavalel will appear at Northampton Magistrates Court tomorrow. The former Met Police Commissioner has been accused of trying to minimise the murder of Sarah Everard. The government's outgoing advisor on tackling violence against women told the Sunday Times Dame Cressida Dick complained shortly after the murder that the government's initial response was over the top. Dame Cressida has strenuously denied making the comments. The founder of the Big Issue magazine says the government needs to get off its rear in tackling homelessness in the UK. Lord Bird, who launched the magazine in 1991, warns the threat of homelessness for families is worse than it's ever been. He says there are 1 million people who face slipping into poverty due to not being able to pay their rent or mortgage. He's urging the government to move away from short-term solutions. And Eurovision winners Ukraine has picked their entry for the next year's song contest. The competition to select a group was broadcast live from a metro station in the capital, Kiev, which is also doubles up as a bomb shelter. Dvorchi won with the song Heart of Steel, and they'll now be heading to Liverpool in May. The competition is usually held in the winning country, but will be held in the UK instead due to the ongoing war in Ukraine. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now let's get back to Nana.
Good afternoon. If you've just joined me, where have you been? It's fast approaching 5 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News. I'm Nana Akua, and for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today is political commentator Sam Downer, also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Still to come each Sunday at 5 o'clock, I'm joined by a celebrity, a former MP, or someone who's had an extremely interesting career to take a look at life after the job. We talk highs, lows and lessons learned and what comes next on the outside. And today, it's outside politics. Our special guest was at the forefront of the government during the COVID pandemic. He was a leading figure in the NHS test and trace system. He left government under Boris Johnson's second cabinet reshuffle, and he used to manage the nightclub Ministry of Sound. So who is it? Stay tuned for the big reveal. Then, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is it fair to rely on the army for everything? The government have drafted in over 1,000 army personnel to help cover for ambulance drivers as they prepare to go on strike over pay. Now, if the army are being used as a crutch for the lack of workers, what happens when we need the military? Is it fair to rely on them? Email me your thoughts, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or tweet me at gbnews. So it is time for this week's Outside. Did you guess? No, did you guess? All right, so from working as a journalist to owning a nightclub, our next guest has a very interesting career. Now, he was a Minister of Health during the COVID pandemic. He worked very closely alongside the former Health Secretary, Matt Hancock. Can't believe they've revealed his face already. Look, I'm going to speak to people about this. Heads will roll. Not yet. He was behind the NHS Test and Trace Service, which was established to help prevent the spread of COVID-19. He left the government during Boris Johnson's second cabinet reshuffle. He also managed to officially become part of the House of Lords in 2018 through a hereditary peers by election. And in his time away from work, he's a loving father to his 4 children. So who is he? Yes, well, I'm delighted to say that I'm joined by Lord James Bethell. He's in the studio now. James, thank you very much for joining me.
Nice to be here, Nana.
It's good to see you. What, you managed the Ministry of Sound, or did you own it? What happened?
Well, there were some incredible people who set it up with this amazing vision of a club that opened at 2 in the morning, dedicated to music with an amazing sound system. but they blew it up pretty quickly. And then another team came in to sort things out, and I was in that sort of second wind, and we grew it from a shed in Elephant Castle into a global youth brand and had a lot of fun doing it.
That's amazing. And you've come into the studio in trainers and looking really funky, so I'm getting it now. I get the picture. So let's talk about this then. So, Lord Bethel, you've been, you've been in politics for a while, and one of the big things that people may have heard about you properly through the COVID pandemic. So talk to me about, first of all, how you came to be working alongside Matt Hancock and what it was like during that time.
Well, it was an extraordinary time. It was the busiest 2 years of my life. It's probably the most important thing I'll ever do in my life. We heard about it first right at the beginning of January when there was something on the horizon, and CMO started coming into our office and escalating our concern. But government really had its head elsewhere, so it didn't really get prioritised across government for some time. But when it did and the machine moved into action, it was a remarkable thing to be part of. And I was just totally impressed by the professionalism and insight of the people I worked with, and by the British public, who did so much more than anyone thought that they possibly would do in reaction to the pandemic.
Well, see, what was your role within that then? Because I think a lot of people might actually completely disagree with what you said, because we had some very disastrous attempts at track and trace or test and trace or whatever it was. Nothing seemed to be working properly, and all the little apps that they tried to create, everything was always better somewhere else, even though it's supposed to be, world-beating. So what was your role in that during the pandemic?
Well, I was the House of Lords Minister, junior minister, working for Matt Hancock, and I was the Life Sciences Minister, so quite a lot theoretically landed on my desk. I had to take all the legislation through the House of Lords, so was very much accountable for the measures that we brought in, including lockdown and vaccine measures.
So you would have been around when people are saying only 6 people in your house or 6 people in this and that, all of that?
No, I took all of that through Parliament, or at least the House of Lords bit of it. And the thing I'd say is, it's probably true that we got off to a slow start. We weren't in great shape. We'd run down our public health resources, and we'd just been through an election and through Brexit, so our head was somewhere else. But we caught up very well, and I think when the inquest happens, it will judge quite benignly the achievement of both government and the British people in terms of fighting the virus, preserving life, and getting the country back on its feet.
So as you were bringing in some of the legislation, which now we know that some of the severity of the lockdown may have actually been slightly counterproductive, or that's what we think anyway, because we couldn't possibly know what would have happened if we hadn't done it that way. What was your view as that legislation was going through? Did you think that those things were reasonable? And now looking back on it, do you think there's anything that perhaps was a bit ridiculous?
Listen, I find it extraordinary what we went through and that we did the things we did. It seems like it was a dream in some respects. But no, it was very evidence-led. We really studied hard on what the impact might be. There were many times when we had literally no idea what the virus might do. To give you an example, it didn't used to jump more than 2 metres, and then Delta came along in September 2021. And it was much, much more infectious. Those kinds of twists and changes were extremely difficult to predict. And we were, of course, very worried that the virus might get worse. That was the precedent in other viruses. So it might have started attacking children or pregnant women or other people who were vulnerable. So we were defensive to begin with. But in the round, I think we broadly got it right. And I think the British public broadly supported what we did. Certainly the opinion polls and the reaction we got from our engagement was that the public were extremely concerned about the virus and were keen for us to stop it from spreading.
So what about, was it test and trace or track and trace? I get confused at what they're meant to be called. Which one was it that you were running? Are they the same thing? What is it, track and trace, test and trace?
They're the same thing. It began with a small, frankly under-resourced Public Health England facility. They clearly couldn't scale it quickly enough, so we created a new body outside the NHS. The NHS were focused on treating, this was about preventing. And we took it from literally a few hundred tests a day to nearly 1 million tests a day. And in that, it was a hell of a roller coaster ride, and there were undoubtedly mistakes, but we built one of the most impressive pieces of civil infrastructure this country or almost the world has ever seen. And certainly other countries became extremely envious, both of the scale, the capacity and the speed and the accuracy of our testing. No other country was able to do it in the same way.
Well, so the testing that we did was good, because I heard that there were a lot of false positives. The actual test kits themselves weren't as accurate. Is that valid?
No, there were undoubtedly occasions when we got things wrong. Operationally, it was incredibly tough to organise. We had to turn around the tests incredibly quickly. And at the beginning, not everyone knew their NHS number, so we were starting in a place that, frankly, the data wasn't up to scratch. But by the time things got moving, I think that the accuracy of the tests was extremely high, and the turnaround that people had was extremely strong. And I think in terms of the contact tracing,
that was disastrous.
It was a remarkable achievement. Everyone had some mixed experiences. Certainly, me and my family were engaged with them many, many times. But it really did slow down the spread of the virus and saved many, many lives.
Do you think, I mean, a lot of people saw it that the country was at a standstill, and that actual standstill probably cost quite a few lives in itself?
Yes.
And there were quite a few difficulties with it as well, like it was pinging people who, you know, it seemed to be all over the place, and in the end, most people didn't even want to get the app in the end.
I remember the very first briefing we had from the CMO, and the CMO told us about how pandemics work, and he told us some things that we didn't really know or understand. He said, for instance, that the second wave will be bigger than the first wave, which was totally counterintuitive in the spring of 2021, but he was absolutely right about that. He also said that more people will die of non-COVID because of the pressure on the healthcare system than of COVID itself. And that is, unfortunately, a fact of life when you have pandemics. The impact is not just on the health system and the people who die of the disease itself. It's on the economy, and it's on the broader health of the country. And the trick is to keep the healthcare system on its feet so it doesn't all escalate into a big disaster. More people would have died, and the economy would have been hit even harder if we had let the treatment of the virus spin out of control. And that never happened.
Well, we got lucky. Omicron came along, and it became almost like a slightly natural vaccine because it was a much milder form of the disease that seemed to give us a level of protection against the other forms of the virus. But
I'm not sure, by the way, Nana, if that's entirely right. I think
you don't think so?
I think
why do you not think that's
well,
right?
I think that the thing I would really attribute value in was not chance. It was in the power of the vaccine. I remember at the beginning, we were told not to base our plans on the vaccine. And that was one of the reasons why we piled into test and trace in the big way that we did, because that was our fallback plan. If the vaccine hadn't have worked as well as it did, then we would have been living in a world where testing and tracing would have been part of everyone's life. But we were really lucky, and our scientists were skilled to create a vaccine that, although it needs boosters, does prevent severe disease.
Well, I mean, look, I'm going with some scientists, some South African scientists who said that Omicron was actually seemed to be a good thing in a sense. And I think there was a lot of talk that it was actually a good thing. And obviously with the layering of protection that a lot of people had the virus, so they had some protection. The vaccine also came into account, and some of the measures that people were taking, washing their hands, covering their mouth, all that kind of thing, eventually had a layering effect that formed a level of protection. But a lot of people are looking at that vaccine now and saying that actually it isn't as effective. It couldn't really be called a vaccine because it doesn't really vaccinate. What it does is just give you a layer, but you can still catch the virus.
Well, I'm afraid that is what vaccines are like, and we were warned that from the beginning. There are some, like the smallpox vaccine, that you take once and you never need to look at that disease again in the face. But most vaccines do erode. And it is true that this vaccine does erode quite a lot. And I think we do need further investment to improve the vaccine and to get better vaccines. I don't think the book is closed on COVID vaccinations.
Yeah, well, it certainly shouldn't be, because obviously a lot of people, many people died as a result of the vaccine themselves. Vaccine-injured people who were not really taken into account initially that seriously, but now people are acknowledging that there are things like myocarditis, and they're definitely attributing certain conditions to it. Do you think we should be carrying on in this direction with these particular vaccines, in particular the mRNA versions?
Yeah, I think that there are impacts from a lot of people taking vaccines, but on something like heart impacts, the thing that will really affect your heart is catching COVID. I mean, much more than ever taking the vaccine. So the proportionality of it is completely on the side of the vaccine. Does the vaccine need to be improved? Yes, undoubtedly it does. But I think we have done everything we possibly can to try to protect any downsides from the vaccine.
Do you think it was right to do the max vaccination with people who are not vulnerable, as it were? Although some people don't realise they have a vulnerability. But do you think it was wise to do that overall approach? Because as we've seen, especially with some of the young people, I mean, they're talking about rolling out to really young people, which I don't agree with at all. So because
definitely non-vulnerable people. We're seeing that people who shouldn't have been impacted hard by the virus, or even had a very mild disease, are having quite long effects as a result. The number of people who are describing symptoms of long COVID is 1.5 million at the moment. I personally had a very mild disease in October, and I'm still completely knackered as a result of it. So I think it is a nasty disease. And the thing with the children is they don't have strong symptoms themselves, but they are carriers of the disease. So I think it is worth looking at whether we should be trying to contain the spread of it, but taking a very hard-nosed look at that.
I think perhaps we should look at making the vaccine actually work as a proper vaccine, working out how we can actually stop it from allowing people to still continue to be vectors of the disease. And then that way, perhaps people will be more intuitive and be prepared to take it. But at the moment, I'm out with it. I've done my bits, and I think I've done a few. I probably had COVID. I don't want any more of them, only because of what I'm seeing, and I'm thinking, I want to step back. Why do you think, though, the British public, in a sense, this country did have quite a high death toll to the virus?
Well, I think there are several reasons. I think I've already said that I don't think we were in a great state, first of all. But this country is not healthy, Nana. We are one of the countries of the world that has some of the highest levels of obesity. We've got very high prevalence of disease amongst some parts of our society, of smoking. We have mental health pressures. Our NHS is fantastic at treating people who are sick. But as a country, we are not good at avoiding disease. And therefore, when people went into hospital with virus, very often they had comorbidities. They had pressure on their heart, on their weight, and that led them to be hit much harder by the disease. And we need to look at that as a national priority.
And also equipment, so PPE, we had issues with that as well. I mean, I know you can't really talk too much about the Michelle Mone situation because obviously that's under investigation, but what can you tell us about all of that?
Well, there was an international crisis around PPE. No country had enough at the beginning, and I think we did well overall to scramble to try to get some. It was completely unseemly, and I think as a country we did well to prioritise PPE, and a lot of money was spent to do that. And I think that was the right thing to do. On the whole, entrepreneurs and those who supported us did really well and brilliantly. But there were a very small minority who I feel did take the mick, did try to line their own pockets and behaved in a distasteful fashion. And I really regret that because overall the country really stepped up.
And finally, Matt Hancock.
Yes.
Did you know about that thing that was going on? Did everybody know? Seriously.
I didn't know about it at all. And I mean, he's given his account of it, and I just stand by what he said.
Well,
really.
I think he did a good job in the jungle. I forgive him anyway. I know some people wouldn't, but I think he's human, just like everybody else. So, and talk to me very briefly about what you're up to now. Then, what's going on in your world?
Well, I think the pandemic did touch me. It's been a year since I've been a minister. I've been thinking about what I should do next, and I am very focused on the health of the nation. I think that I would like to try and focus on trying to improve the overall healthiness of this country.
Well, I think we should work together because I'm a fitness expert and I think we could do some good stuff together, you and me.
Let's do that.
Thank you so much. It's really good to talk to you.
Good to talk to you, Nana.
That is Lord James Bethell. He's the former health minister. He also worked alongside Matt Hancock. This is GB News. Coming up, it's time for our Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, is it fair to rely on the army for everything? The government have drafted in over 1,000 army personnel to help cover the ambulance drivers and border force workers as they prepare to go on strike. But is that right? I mean, why should they have to do it? Let's bear in mind they're not allowed to strike, and they're actually paid less than those who are striking, and those who are striking are asking for more. I mean, shouldn't they be focusing on their own rules? We'll discuss all of that after this.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late-night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
It is 25 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua. Now it's time for our great British debate this hour. I'm asking, is it fair to rely on the army for everything? In the light of all the strikes and protests halting services up and down the country, the government drafted in 1,200 military personnel to step in for ambulance drivers and border force guards and all that lot. And the thing is, these workers within the military are actually paid a lot less than the people who are striking, and they also don't have the right to strike themselves. Now, the Chief of Defence has warned that the army officers shouldn't be treated as spare capacity, and instead should focus on their role as a soldier. If the army are being used as the crutch for the lack of workers, what happens when we do need the military? Are they capable of even doing the jobs required? And is it actually fair for them to have to cover for private sector workers or public sector workers who can strike whilst they themselves can't? So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is it fair to rely on the army for everything? I'm joined now by former Labour Minister for Europe, Dennis McShane. Dennis, thank you for joining me. You menace, Dennis the Menace. So what do you think? Do you think the army are capable to tackle the vacancies that are left by strikers? And actually, should we be expecting them to do that?
No, I'm a great fan of the army. I think they are superb professionals, and probably it's the last bit of British public service, the British state, that functions according to honour, duty and responsibility. So I understand if there's some demand being put on them. I don't actually think it'll make much difference, because the people, I think, are with the nurses. We've had the accusations their pay rise could be inflationary, but Sir John Geeve, the Deputy Governor of the Bank of England, said quite clearly, look, the National Health Service doesn't charge anything. It doesn't put up prices. So by definition, you can't have wage inflation in it. The people who are putting up prices are our supermarkets and lots of other people who are quietly racketeering to make money out of this. My worry about the army is it's been cut by successive Conservative prime ministers to the lowest level since the beginning of the 18th century. We're half the size of the French army. They do a magnificent job. We get a great bang for the buck, but they're trained to kill, for heaven's sake. And turning them into nice, cuddly nurses, I'm just not sure it's really going to work or really help. I'm very disappointed in Rishi Sunak. I didn't think he was going to be such a gimmick merchant as Boris Johnson and Liz Truss. But with this little stunt, he's back into silly gimmicks instead of sitting down, talking with the nurses, cutting a deal in the middle, and stopping any more fear and worry for the British people.
But what do you think, though, briefly, Dennis, of the idea that, first of all, the army are going to... Somebody has to do it, so we're going to get the army in. But then there's the fact that the army are public sector workers who cannot strike, and they're actually getting paid a lot less than public sector workers who can strike, and they're covering for these people. It just doesn't sit with me. What's your thought on that?
We're all uncomfortable with it, and I'm sure the army personnel, especially the lower ranks, who are perhaps hoping to get away for a bit of a Christmas with families in the coming days, will be disappointed. They'll do their duty, and we should admire them for that. But we should be very, very careful. I mean, the highest commanding ranking officer, the head of the entire military in Britain, Admiral Rankin, said today he doesn't want to get the army involved. Obviously, you'll get a few right-wing officers who'll pop up and sort of write letters to the Daily Telegraph saying, "Oh, no, break the strike. Strikes are terrible." But we're with our nurses. I mean, I don't think they're being sent to drive trains or to do the portering and other work in stations that, of course, the RMT and Mr. Lynch's members are out doing. It's an easy target to drive some ambulances around, maximum publicity, it's gimmick time. And frankly, I just wish our Prime Minister... Has he ever used the NHS, Nana? Do you know? I mean, you follow...
Of course I use the NHS. I don't think Rishi Sunak, though, does, because remember, he's almost a billionaire. Dennis, stay right there, because I'm also joined by former head of counter-terrorism and UK operations, Major General Chip Chapman. Major, first of all, thank you so much for joining us. Now, as a military man, do you think that the British Army is actually capable of filling in the jobs? And do you even think it's fair that they should be doing that, considering initially, I think a soldier gets about 21 grand at the lowest rank, and somebody in the medical profession about 27 grand. The soldier cannot strike, whilst the person in the medical profession can, and they're kind of covering for them.
Not really a question of whether it's fair, it's a question of whether it's policy and stated commitment. And it's been policy and stated commitment since year dot, really. So, for example, when Dennis was a minister, we had the 4Fs where the armed forces, it's not just the army, got involved in floods, fuel, foot and mouth, and 26,000 armed forces personnel on the national fire strike under Fresco. So it's something that they do. And in fact, where Defence has got it wrong, and where the Chief of Defence Staff is slightly wrong, is that they've wanted to do this more particularly in the last few years when Iraq and Afghanistan were drawing to a close. They wanted to do this. That's why, for example, they got involved in the Olympics in 2012, and why it's embedded in all the defence documents, both in the 2015 National Security Review and explicitly in the 2021 Integrated Review, where it does talk explicitly about support to the civil authorities in terms of floods, or in those that they've put on standby for counter-terrorist operations, as we saw in 2017 op tempora, where there are always 3,800 armed forces personnel at some sort of notice to move to help the government if it wishes to get troops involved.
I suppose, what would the army normally be doing then if they weren't getting involved in stuff like this? Are they busy? Because I sort of think, well, in a way, I think they should be doing it, but then what are they doing? What do they do
Well, the first thing is that core defence outputs are still being carried out on a daily basis. So if you look across the three services at the moment, you have quick reaction alert aircraft to shoot down, for example, renegade or rogue aircraft, or even Russian missiles should they come across. You've got the continuous at-sea patrol from the nuclear bombers on nuclear deterrent. And, for example, the army at the moment are deployed on the enhanced forward presence as part of NATO in, for example, Estonia and Poland.
So they are quite busy. Let's bring in Dennis McShane. Let's get him back on and let's have a chat with him. Let's get you both in. So Dennis, then, in your view, then, I'm trying to summarise what you were saying. You're saying that the army shouldn't be involved in this, and actually the focus should more be on making sure that the services are running properly and people are being paid better, rather than bringing the army in. Is that your view?
Yes, I mean, of course I agree. And I remember as a Minister General Sir Mike Jackson with the red berry striding across the hills, kind of burning mounds of sheep to sort out BSE and foot and mouth and so on. And of course they're there for emergencies, for giant floods. But our nurses aren't terrorists. This isn't counter-terrorism. This isn't about stopping the Russians sort of sending drones over the UK. These are about decent women, men, middle-aged, who've been treated very poorly and shabbily by the government in recent years. Their patience has snapped. I mean, they never went on strike before, and they're just saying to the British people, please give us a... We're not going to produce an inflationary settlement. The figures that Oliver Dowden was producing this morning have now been completely shot down. We have a Prime Minister who doesn't even know what the letters NHS stand for because he's so rich and there's no need for the NHS. And so I just think he's alienating a lot of people.
Yeah, but the army...
I've got complete respect for all the points of what the military do, but not frankly, to get involved on a one-sided way with a government that's lost the support of the people simply to humiliate our lovely nurses.
Well, listen, Dennis, we're running out of time. Major General Chapman as well, thank you so much for joining me. Former head of counter-terrorism, Ministry of Defence, and also Dennis McShane, former Minister for Europe. Thank you very much for joining me. That's their views, but what are yours? This is GB News. If you just tuned in, welcome on board. But where on earth have you been? There's still more to come, because coming up, we'll continue with the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, is it fair to rely on the army for everything? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, political commentator Sam Dowler, and also broadcasting journalist Danny Kelly. And we'll bring you up to date. There's no point in you guys being in here. We'll bring you up to date on the latest, of course, with the action of the World Cup final. I think it's still playing. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Hello there, it's 5:33. I'm Bethany Elsey in the GB newsroom. A man has been charged with facilitating attempted illegal entry into the UK. It's after 4 people died and 39 were rescued from the English Channel when a migrant boat capsized earlier this week. Kent police say 19-year-old Ibrahima Bar of no fixed address has been remanded in custody and will appear at Folkestone Magistrates Court tomorrow. A cabinet minister says it's not fair that military personnel are having to cover for public sector workers on strike over the festive period. Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, Oliver Dowden, urged unions to call off the industrial action, warning significant pay rises would end up making everyone poorer. More than 1,000 troops are expected to cover striking workers, such as paramedics and Border Force officials. Police searching a property in Birmingham say they've found what is believed to be the remains of a child. West Midlands police have been searching the garden of a house in Handsworth following information about a possible burial. A post-mortem examination will be carried out to establish the cause of death. Engineers have restored power to all homes in Shetland today, but burst water pipes have reportedly more than doubled across Scotland as a result of thawing ice. More than 5,000 homes were cut off last week as temperatures dropped as low as -17 degrees. A major incident was declared after heavy snow downed power lines. Scottish Water has repair teams out in several areas to fix the water supply, but warned that some response times may not come until late this week. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB Plus radio, and we'll get back to Nana in just a moment.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents. Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. B, I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Good afternoon. It's just coming up to 39 minutes after 5 o'clock even. Crikey. It's time for a Great British Debate this hour. I'm Nana Akua. If you've just tuned in, welcome. Now, the question I'm asking is it fair to rely on the army for everything in light of all the strikes and protests halting services across the country? The government has drafted in about 1,200 army officers to cover for ambulance drivers and border force personnel. Now, the Chief of Defence has warned that military personnel should not be treated as spare capacity and instead they should focus on their role as army officers. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is it actually fair to rely on the army for pretty much everything? Let's see what my panel make of that. I'm joined by Sam Dowler and also Danny Kelly. Sam, what do you think? Is it fair?
Well, for starters, it's their job. It's their job to fill in situations like this. But, not to be used as like a government shill or for example, we don't know what they feel about the strikes, whether they agree with it or not. The army, for example, have been given a 3.4% pay rise in the last 4 years, a lot less than the NHS. And then you look to, for example, the barrister strike earlier on in the year. They had the government over a barrel and were given a 15% pay rise. Because you can't shoehorn the army in to come do a barrister's job, of course. But don't worry, they can drive an ambulance, blah blah blah. I mean, come on now. We have to think about the army, for example, and the fact that they're trying to make the boots on the ground a smaller capacity. And this could diminish their operational capabilities, which is what we need at a time when we are not technically, but at war.
And broke. Danny, what do you think?
I don't think it's going to reduce the technical operational capabilities.
If it lasted for a long time, it might.
But they get advance warning, so they know the dates. I think the army should be as apolitical as possible. And I'm going to make some sweeping generalisations, but
Not you. Might break a habit of a lifetime. We're supposed to be shocked.
Here we go. Most of the soldiers who will be drafted in, this is a generalisation, they will come from working-class estates up and down the country. They haven't gone to Sandhurst, that's where the captains are trained. And they're the Henrys and they're the Ruperts of the army. So these kids, generally speaking, will have an ideological siding with the strike because they're Scousers, they're Geordies, they're Manx.
I don't think it's that clear-cut, though, with these strikes.
Finish my point, please. So they are now being ideologically persuaded to undermine the nurses' strike.
Yeah.
The nurses, the mums and dads of these squaddies, some of them will be on the picket line. I'm pleased that they're doing it because ambulances need to be driven. As I understand, they can't go through the red lights, though. You need training for that. So they're going to be fairly useless ambulance drivers.
Well, not necessarily.
But you need training.
Do you know, years ago when I did Duke of Edinburgh...
name dropping.
I took a cab in the silver one, even though I was supposed to be trekking, but let's not worry about that. I got the medal now, so... But, I mean, I was doing Duke of Edinburgh, and I went to the fire service, because that was one of my things I was going to do. And there, at the time, now I'm sure it's slightly more clever and technical than that, but at the time, the fire service actually had a button that you could press, which would make all the lights go green, so that everyone, that kept the traffic moving. So when the fire engine was going through, a bit like in the Italian Job.
Well, why did they stop it? Because they
well, I don't know whether they stopped it or not. So I'm saying when you're saying they don't need to, I'm saying they won't need to jump red lights if they have this capability.
Yeah, but when you see an ambulance driver jumping a red light, that means that they can't change the lights.
Well, maybe not,
Yeah, of course.
but there's lots of them about. I mean, they'd have to press loads of buttons, wouldn't they?
But
they could do that. I mean, it was only a little village in Chelmsford.
But also the army and the NHS, they look at foolishness that's happened during the pandemic. Like they say we can't afford to give the nurses this extra pay. We can't afford to give anyone this extra pay. But then they waste 44 billion on PPE, on nepotism, on corruption, and they give it to their pals and stuff. Where are they getting that? Why can't they get that money back and give it to the nurses?
Well, also there was that thing as well, and then also there was that potential of dropping the high rate of tax from 45 to 40%.
Exactly.
And then hang on, wait, let me finish now because I'm talking. You're just like and that would have cost approximately 1.8 billion, and that is slightly less than what, if they did honour this pay rise, it would cost the government. So a lot of these people are looking at it going, well, you found that for that, so why can't you find 1.something billion?
Well, why are you clapping and banging your pans 1 minute?
Do you know, I'm tired of that. Irritates me, that does, young man. About 2 years ago, we were clapping and banging and all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
OK, they were doing their job in very hard situations. The reason that the government...
They still are.
Of course they are. The reason that the government can't afford to give a 19% pay rise is that it's going to cost £10 billion.
Come to the table and give them 12 then. Come to the table and give them 13.
But why ask such a ridiculous amount?
£10 billion. And also, most of the NHS trusts decided not to go on strike. So you have the 40-odd NHS trusts who say it's not about the money, which they would say, but it is. It's about working conditions and
that's part of it, though,
and future recruitment.
Yeah.
So how come, I think, 2/3 of NHS trusts didn't have a concern about future recruitment, didn't have a concern about working conditions, and didn't have a concern about
because some
money.
of them are paid quite well, actually, in the NHS.
But I get it. It's not just the NHS, it's the rail system.
It's all of them.
It's the border as well. And it's like I just said about the barristers, that's the only thing the army can't come in and be a lawyer, can they? So therefore they'll give them their 15%. Whereas all these other people who they just think are disposable, and they're like, don't worry, the army will come in and sort it out. That's not right.
They don't think that the NHS is disposable.
No, of course not. Of course not.
Well,
no. What I'm saying is what the government thinks that they can just bring in like these squaddies, and they can drive the ambulances, they can do this, they can do that, they can be the RNLI if they're going to strike as well, and then. But it isn't. That isn't how it works. They're not just there for that.
Well, the general strike all those years ago in the 1920s, that was broken partly by the organisation and obviously the military, and the government were very organised. So, of course, that strike only lasted 9 days.
A government very organised?
Well, yes. Oh my gosh!
What is this nonsense?
I know, it's unbelievable, isn't it? Because actually, I think, look, the other angle of this, then, the aspect that I'm sort of looking at, is the fact that people who are in the army are public servants, but however they do not have the right to strike. Now, it turns out that the lowest grade paramedic gets paid about £600 more than somebody who's in the army. You know? So that is at the bottom sort of level. And it just seems slightly... I know they're public service servants and things, they don't have the right to strike. It seems a little bit unfair that they are covering for people who are public servants.
Unfair. It stinks. As I said, they've been given like no pay rise in the last 4 years, 3.4 as I said. And obviously these people are striking. They probably, like you said as well, it's their families. They probably agree with it as well. And then coming in as like an extra arm of the government,
it does undermine
chills, like they're like professional scabs that are forced to, forced to go over the line, and that isn't fair.
But on the other side of it, I think that the army, as Danny said, that is their job. They're meant to cover things.
Exactly.
And anyway, that's why I asked him, what are they doing when there isn't a war? Well, let's turn our attention now to the final of the World Cup. Yes! Well, there's a nail-biting final, and it's gone to penalties. I'm joined now by GBNews reporter Paul Hawkins, who's in Qatar. I've got some Qatar. And he's out there for us now. Paul, what's the atmosphere like? What's going on?
What's going on? I'll tell you what, it's only the greatest football match of all time. It doesn't matter if you hate football, it doesn't matter if you hate sport. It's absolute wall-to-wall drama. It's pulled every single eyeball in the world onto it, quite frankly. And why not? Argentina, for 80 minutes of this match, it wasn't a case of allez le bleu, it was où est le bleu. The French were nowhere. They weren't even in this contest. The Argentines went in 2-0 up at half-time, Messi with a penalty, then Di Maria with another goal, and then in the 80th minute, like I said, France were nowhere, but the world's other best player, who also happens to play with Lionel Messi for the same club, Kylian Mbappe, scored 2 goals in the space of 97 seconds. France then they took it into extra time at 2-2, and then it went 3-2 up. Lionel Messi, you think he's written it, the record books, it's the ultimate story. He's going to win the World Cup, he's going to score the winner in extra time. And then the French, right at the end, there's another Kylian Mbappe penalty, and it's now 3-3, and they're going to go to penalties in the World Cup final. Remember, Lionel Messi has never won the World Cup. It's the only trophy that's eluded him. Will he win the trophy? That, for some people, then makes him one of the world's greatest ever football players, along with Pelé and Messi. The drama is incredible.
Well, it sounds like a great match. I'll have to watch it on catch-up or something like that. Or, frankly, I mean, I'm not one. I can't be bothered with football. But I'll be very happy to celebrate when the final score comes in. Thank you so much, Paul Hawkins. He's there in Qatar. Right, now it's time for Supplement Sunday. But before I do that, let's bring in our great British voices, because this is the part of the show where we find out what you think about the topics we're discussing. And I was asking, what do you think with regards to the strikers? Is it fair that the army should take over? Let's bring in our great British voices. Where are they? Where's the great British voices? Oh. Technical issues with the great. They're probably, do you know what? They're probably watching the last hour.
Yeah.
Let's talk what people are saying there. This is what people are saying at home. It's gone. It was there and then it's gone. This is so much fun. Right, well, let's do Supplement Sunday. Why not? And then we'll talk about the topics that have caught my eye. Joining me, if you just tuned in, is my wonderful Danny Kelly, who is a journalist and broadcaster, and also Sam Dowler, political commentator. Right, who's got a good story? Have you got one?
Well, mine is about, I mean, I don't know about a good story, but it's certainly a fun one. We're talking about Marks and Spencer's have been forced to step back after a row about toasted tea cakes.
Oh, really?
How very British. They've basically taken toasted tea cakes and said that they won't serve them past 11 a.m. because they are now a breakfast food. You know, like, for example, if you ever wanted to get like a double egg McMuffin from McDonald's, you can't get it past 11 o'clock. Right, but now McDonald's are saying that you can't get a tea cake past 11 o'clock, and people have complained, and the big boss of M&S has said no, scrapped it. Scrapped it.
Well, do you know what? You can't get actually at this time as well. Just eat. Right, let's go to. What's true? They're so busy with the World Cup. Right, let's go to our wonderful Great British Voices and find out what they think about with regards to striking, whether or not they think it's a good thing. So I've got 3 of you. Have I got there? I've got Graham Waugh. I've got who's that? Alan McNeely. And also David Baum. Right, Graham Waugh, what do you think? Is it fair? You've grown something on your face as well. You never had that last time I saw you. Graham.
Yeah, I'm going for the Santa gig.
Oh, very good, yeah. It's that time of year. So do you think it's fair? Do you think it's fair, then, to rely on the army? You've got about 30 seconds, Graham.
No, I don't. I don't think it's fair to rely on the army, but good old British Army always brings us a backup. But I feel that the government need to talk to the NHS, and at 19%, the nurses they deserve that. But where's the counter offer? I just don't get it.
Yeah, thank you for that, Graham. Stay there. Alan in Grimsby, what about you? You've got about 30 seconds, Al.
The military will do what they always do. They'll do it with professionalism and good humour. As one of your panellists said, they probably won't like it in some cases because they'll have that connection with they don't want to be involved in civil disputes. But it's part of the job. You just get up and crack on and do it.
Wow. OK, and finally, David in Watford.
Hello, Nana. Right, very quickly, the army aren't going to be in the operating theatres and on nursing people. They should be driving the ambulances. They've always been around. We had the Green Goddesses during the fire dispute. No one complained about that. The dispute nurses should get as much as they can possibly get, but it's got to be paid for from somewhere along the line. Maybe not machines that go ping so often, and replace them with wages for nurses.
Well, listen, thank you so much for your thoughts. Lovely to join me as well. Alan in Guernsey, Graham in Luton, and also David in Watford. Thank you. Right, let's carry on with Supplements Sunday. I know Danny's got a supplement that has caught his eye, tickled his fancy. What is it?
Sure. And just going back to Sam's Sunday supplement, no one tells me when I can't eat a tea cake.
Right.
No one.
Toasted with a nice bit of butter on top.
What, just the one?
Just a couple of dozen. Right then. This is all about age gaps. And Ross King, who is the Hollywood reporter for Lorraine, is 60. And he has split with his actress wife, Brianna Deutsch, who's 38 after 7 years of marriage. So they got married when he was, say, 52, 51. Yeah. She would have been like 29, 30. And that's a hell of an age gap.
But is he rich?
He's his brother to... who's he brother to? He's Ross King.
Oh,
his brother is not Jonathan King.
No, he's the...
yes.
He's the...
Yes.
He's been in prison for a number of things. I'm not sure he's married. He's
brother. He's definitely brother to somebody important.
It's definitely not Jonathan King.
He's your supplement, you tell me.
Yeah, but no one mentioned Jonathan King. No, it doesn't mention his brother. It's a divorce. Why would it mention his brother?
He's watching the football on his iPhone.
Throw me under the bus.
Right.
So, yeah, age gaps, age gaps.
Yeah.
Too big an age gap.
So what's the biggest age gap?
10 years. My wife is younger than me.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I've been out with someone who was 19 years younger than me.
No, that's far too much of an age.
Yeah, but I'm 45.
Well, I've been out with somebody who's 20 years younger than me.
You cougar! What a cougar she is.
Me. How did that go, though, babes?
He had to go. It was just...
dispensable.
Could you imagine if he, dumped me? And, my God, that would be so bad. It'd be so upset.
It would be tragic.
Yeah, he's lost out anyway. Right, and now to my supplement. Well, a large number of gender inclusion workshops have been scrapped after receiving complaints of big scientifically nonsensical complainants of women's rights being overridden due to the beliefs of the workshop organisers, along with people finding contents awful and upsetting or talked about. So what do you think, then, guys? Should gender inclusion workshops be abolished? And also, what even is gender inclusion? What is it? What do you think, Sam? Should it be...
Well,
nonsense?
I mean, it's a bit of a curveball. I wasn't expected to talk about this today, but I do believe in gender inclusion. I believe in trans rights, non-binary rights. I believe that, there are various genders. I know people say that there are two sexes, fine, when it comes down to biology, but there are various genders now. So I think that people should and would benefit from being
But don't you think it's
them.
a contradiction in terms? Because what if you're a gender that isn't listed? You have to make up a new one, Danny.
I found out recently that the individual in charge of Rape Crisis Scotland is a bloke who's now a woman.
I think he lost that job. I don't know whether he's still...
He did lose that job, yeah.
It's good that you say he instead of she, because he's a bloke. He's a bloke in a dress.
But the point is that it's like everybody has massive goes about pronouns, for example. It's okay to ask somebody's pronoun and for them to tell you, I have trans friends, and and at the beginning
So
I was
what?
like,
Who cares? I just want to know your name, Sam. I'll do that.
Or just be respectful to what people want to be called. Like,
Well,
for example,
I'm
if someone gets married, you use their new married name. If that's what they wanted.
Maybe not. Well, listen, on today's show, we've been asking, should Ofcom regulate streaming giants? And according to our Twitter poll, 56% of you said yes, 44% of you say no. Interesting. I've got to say a huge thank you to my fabulous panel, political commentator Sam Dowler, and also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. And also thank you to you for joining me today as well. I'll be back at 4, but I can safely say that I don't want to do the spoiler, but Argentina have won. They've beaten penalties. Yes, I'm sorry about that. On penalties. Well, thank you so much for coming. I'll leave you now with the weather forecast. Enjoy your week.
Let's look ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK will be wet and windy in many places as increasingly mild air spreads north. Here are the details. Heavy rain will continue in southwest England this evening with blustery winds. A yellow rain warning is in force as there may be some localised flooding. The rain warning also extends across to Sussex, where heavy rain and strong winds are expected to continue. It'll be a very mild evening compared to recently, as temperatures climb into double figures. Staying wet and windy across Wales tonight, with gusts of 40 miles per hour around the coast. There'll be some heavy bursts of rain at times, particularly in the south. Temperatures will climb across the Midlands this evening, with spells of rain at times. It'll be a windy end to the day too. There's a risk of icy roads across parts of northern England this evening, but temperatures will start to climb through the night, allowing the ice to melt away. It'll stay cloudy and windy with spells of rain at times. Snow will clear to the north of Scotland this evening, followed by spells of rain and strong winds. Any snow on the ground will start to melt as milder air pushes in. It'll be cloudy, windy and mild across Northern Ireland this evening. There could be a few spells of rain at times too. So, mild air will sweep northwards across the country tonight, pushing away the cold and frosty weather that we've experienced in the last 2 weeks. That's how the weather is shaping up overnight into tomorrow morning.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
There's a guy who went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akua, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere. Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.